Okay, good morning and welcome to today's presentation. Now, today the topic is about the difference between communism and capitalism. So this is a topic that is a topic based on the Cold War. So we should begin by explaining the difference between the two. But before we begin, let us have an introduction part of it. So when you talk of the Cold War, it's a war of ideas. These are the ideas of communism and the capitalism. So we go straight. What is communism then? When you talk of communism, we are referring to a government where people share what we call work in a fair way, and they also paid equally. So when you talk of communism per se, you work for the state, and the state caters for your needs on an equal basis. So that's why you can see a picture there demonstrating what we call um, communist states. So when you talk of communism per se, it is coming from the word, the Latin term known as communis, which means common or belonging to all. So when you talk of communism, we belong to the state. So we are properties to the state. So that's the meaning of the word communism per se. So we go straight, and then we talk about the beliefs of communism in regard to this. We need to understand that in a communist state or a country, the rich get richer, while the poor become poorer. So that's a concept that you need to understand. Why? Because they have a parameter of ensuring that there is equality. So that equality brings up what we call or widens up what they call the diversities between the two. So if you are rich, you become richer. But if you are poor, so you become poorer. So the gap is imminent when you talk of communist states. So people want to make things or everything equal. So that's the concept. So when you talk of communism per se, equality for all, that's a notion and that's a belief of communist state. Sorry. When we talk of the goal of communism per se, it is very, very important to understand that is to get rid of the social crisis and make everyone fair or everything very fair and equal before the country. So when you talk of communism per se, it means that the main objective is to ensure that now we don't have class struggles within the state, so that now we have equality at the end of the day. Okay. In regard to that, you can be able to see from the pictures there that now everyone is equal, despite the gender, despite the skin color, despite where you're coming from, your religious background, everything. So we should have something to do with equality at the end of the day. So my question is, do you agree, or or how far do you agree? Do you disagree? Based on what you know, do you think that communism is a good idea? If yes, can you be able to explain why? If not, why are you not supporting it? So maybe you have the potential kind of dangers. So we shall talk about this one at the end of the session. It's very, very important to understand that. Okay, so let us proceed on now. Let us talk about capitalism. So the opposing ideology to communism is what we call capitalism. So when you talk of capitalism per se, it's an economic and a political system where a state, in terms of trade and in terms of industries, are controlled by the individual persons who make what we call profit. So when you talk of controlling businesses and enterprises, controlling trade per se, it is just done by the private entities. That's what they call a capitalism mentality or ideology per se. So it means what? Now it means that now people within a capitalist state, they are free to do their own business, to control industries and so forth. So we have what we call privacy in terms of capitalist states, which is really hindered in a communist state. So in a communist state, we don't have freedom to do your trading activities, enterprises, and other things. You are not supposed to own anything. Anything, including yourself, belongs to the government. But now that is opposing to what they call capitalism. In a capitalist state, that's why they promote what they call liberty, freedom. At the end of the day, we have what they call a private ownership of properties. Now, one of the things you need to understand, capitalism as an ideology is being pioneered by USA. So during that time, especially in the period of 1945 to 1990s or 2000, the pioneer behind capitalism is USA. And the pioneer behind communism is what we call USSR, the former Soviet Union, or the Russian state. So you can be able to say that. So let us proceed. What are the basics of capitalism then? If you can see there, we have what we call promotion of economic growth. And now when you talk about promotion of economic growth, at the end of the day, we are referring to whereby the state allows what we call people to own properties, to engage in private enterprises and other things. At the end of the day, they have at least an improvement in the standard of living. So at the end of the day, compared to what we call a capitalist state. So that's why, in other words, they are saying that capitalism creates what you call capital. And when you talk of capital, by the way, you can get it a lot when we talk of a capitalist state. So capital, it means what? To earn something, at least you can be able to start a business or do something. You have liberty. You are at liberty or freedom to start your own businesses and own them and control them. This one cannot happen in what we call a communist state. Okay. As we continue, when we talk of this, we are talking about the buyers. These are the people who influence what we call the market systems within a capitalist state. Why? Through their what we call demand and their ability to purchase what we call goods and services. So when we talk of capitalism or a capitalist kind of state, there is what we call a limited kind of interference from the state or the government per se. So they don't interfere with this kind of transactions. On the other hand, when you talk of communism, is that you find nothing that you can control on your own. Everything is controlled by the government. Now, on the other hand, also we have what we call the producers. These are now the businesses are motivated by what we call the profit that they make out of their businesses, and therefore they create what we call goods people will buy. So at the end of the day, the production of this kind of goods, it depends on the demand of the people and their ability also to purchase such a kind of goods and services. So that's why when you talk of a capitalist state, the business are run by all they are controlled by what we call individual people. The individuals, not the state. Yeah, so the state stays out of what they call such a kind of transactions. So there is no interference when we talk of the state from the capitalism aspect. But the interference, on the other hand, of communism, you cannot do anything. Anything is controlled by the state. Okay. So let us proceed on. Another second question. I posed to you a question. I hope you understand this. I posed to you a question on capitalism, whether you can support it or not. Let us talk about now, no, on communism. Now let us talk about capitalism per se then. Based on what you know, do you think that capitalism is a good idea? If yes, then explain why. If no, I hope that you are thinking about the potential dangers of capitalism and what are they. So can you be able to compare and contrast between communism and capitalism per se in regard to the Cold War? Okay, now let us now go back to the question. I had posed to you a question on communism. And if you cannot support communism, now it means that you are presuming of the dangers of communism. So that's why we want to talk about now the problems that are associated with communism as an ideology. Number one is what we call lack of individuality. There is no freedom in what we call communism. There is no freedom. People do not enjoy what we call liberty and democracy. So there is no favoring what we call individual interest of the individual. The interest in a communism state is what we call the common good. Yeah, so common to all. Number two, there is lack of choice. You cannot have a choice. Everything is being decided or determined by what we call the government. So, and also equal treatment for all, even if you work harder than the rest. At the end of the day, when we talk of this, at the end of the day, sorry, at the end of the day, um, you can get what we call the services at the end of the day. Yeah, um, when we talk of a communism or a communist kind of state. So anything that you need, you can even have what you call a fake. You can fake that you are sick. And at the end of the day, people can go and work for you. At the end of the day, you get the services or you get what we call food to eat on the table. So there is that tendency of laziness that is being promoted under what we call this thing of let us work together. Let us work together, commonality, common to all. Yeah, so that's one of the dangers, and including those three aspects that you have talked about. Okay, if you have a question, and also pose your question so that this we can be able to address it. Number two, um, now let us talk about the problems that are associated with capitalism. So in a capitalist state, because of what we call promotion of the individual kind of interest, there's what we call individualism. Individualism comes in. And this is one of the key elements that you need to understand as a potential danger of what we call capitalism. This is where by now you find there is a gap between the rich and the poor is widening every day. Eh? Why? Because of individualism. People cannot come together and need to support one another. Yeah, so it becomes a problem. And that's why now the rich becomes richer, the poor becomes poorer in a capitalist state. That's one of the key problems that is associated with what we call capitalism. But you cannot compare capitalism per se with communism. So, in other words, we are talking about capitalism is more has more advantages compared uh, to communism. So then what can be the best solution? When we talk about these two ideologies there, what can be the best solution when we talk about these two ideologies? Do you believe that communism or capitalism is a better economic system that can be embraced? If we can agree on capitalism, what are the reasons that support our argument on this debate? If you know on communism, then now, what are some of the dangers of communism per se? So you need to be very sure of your specific reasons to support your argument. Yeah, so that is why in most cases you find that examiners, they can test you on comparing and contrasting, uh, compare and contrast communism and the capitalism per se, especially during the episode of the Cold War in 1945 to 2000. So to that end, if you have a question, you can be able to raise your question. But the summary of it all is that at the end of the day, when we talk of communism and capitalism per se, we needed to understand the differences between the two. And now the differences between the two led to what we call political tensions between USSR and the USA. And that's why we had what we call the Cold War. So the Cold War, it was a war of ideas. These ideas of communism and capitalism based on competitions, either starting from the economic schemes that were established. Number two, the political alliances that were established in the Cold War. Up to that point, thank you for listening. Until next time, thank you and bye bye.